This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries, of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!
Hello, everybody. It is time for more Law Light, because you need more.
More?
We are, PJ and I are in the all-purpose room at 530 Frederica Street. We're situated, of course, atop the two-story white brick edifice known as Foreman Watson Holtree Owensboro.
Yes.
And we're excited today because it's time to lay down some more Law Light. Mm-hmm. You know, after the torrential downpour yesterday, I felt like I was in the middle of a typhoon or something last night. It was terrible. But the sun is shining. It's a new day. And so here we are. Anything on your mind? What's going on?
Oh, speaking of torrential downpour, and this is funny because once again, this will be a conversation I have with Logan. So for those of you out there who have children, I'm sure you'll be able to relate to this. But, you know, the importance of responsibility comes up a lot when you're raising kids.
Sure.
And I've been having a lot of those conversations with Logan recently. So this morning, after last night, you know, like you said, the torrential downpour, after last night, this morning, go out to the car, get in, Connor's getting in, and he goes, oh, lovely, look what I found. Logan's wallet. At some point, he had dropped it. I don't know why it wasn't in his pants, but it was laying on the ground next to the car. It was soaked. Everything in it. He had like $400 in it. And his like debit card, everything. I mean, someone could have come along and it would have been it would have been a great find. He's very particular about things. And of course, I'm sure a lot of that comes because of the autism, but he wants to keep all of his money with him at all times, and he doesn't like to keep his wallet in his back pocket. I'm basically telling thieves the best way how to
Where's he going to be today at 5 o'clock?
Well, ironically, he's at home today.
If you're listening, keep your wallets on you and don't let them lay outside in the middle of a rainstorm, like last night was.
And don't put all your money in your wallet.
Yeah, don't carry it all. You know, put a little in your shoe,
right?
A little in your suitcase,
under the mattress.
Yeah, have it spread out so you don't get totally hit all at one time.
That's right.
All right. I got a couple of things I want to talk about. One is we're going to start a little segment on Is It Real? And what I mean is, before the podcast today, you flipped a piece of paper out on the table and you said, hey, before we get started, do you think this is legit? And you handed me a piece of paper that has the Western District of Kentucky U.S. District Court logo on it, or seal on it, and it talks about the fact that your name has been pulled out of voter registrations, driver registrations, and that you don't have jury duty yet, but they're putting you like in a jury pool
for potential like federal jury duty.
For federal jury duty,
right,
at the big house down here.
Oh yeah,
okay. And so, I mean, it looks legit, but it did have this little weird language in it about make sure you type this exactly in the address bar of a web browser, as opposed to
don't search for it.
Don't search for it
because you might find out the truth.
Right. So you handed it to me. I read the fine print, and the fine print says if you can't do this electronically, then in about 30 days, a paper qualification form will be sent to you. So, PJ, what we're going to do is we're going to keep tabs on this, okay, on whether that is a real federal jury summons or not.
We will. Okay. So about a month from now.
Right.
Well, when did I get this? I got this the other day. It wasn't.
Yeah, right. So it's going to be a month.
It wasn't yesterday, but it was like.
What's the date on the letter? C.
Conveniently, there is no date.
C. That adds. Is there something on the back? Frequently asked questions.
Just frequently asked questions.
This looks legit, PJ. I think you're.
One of the questions is not, is this real?
Yeah,
that should be.
But you know, the question is we don't know it. So it's given you a 9-digit identification number, right? Mm-hmm. And it tells you when you go on there to enter that in and then answer the prompts. So the issue is number one, if you put that search thing into your internet, are you like downloading a worm? Okay, that's the first thing, right? Are you allowing a worm into your system by putting that address into a search bar, right? Second thing is when you get in there, what kind of information are they going to ask you for?
Exactly.
We don't know yet because we haven't gone there because we don't want to put that on our computers.
Right. And I'm not gonna try anyway because I'm gonna wait for the paper request form.
My advice to you, even though I'm not your attorney, my friendly advice to you was, well, since it says in here that if you don't do the electronic deal, they're going to send you a paper packet. If you get the paper packet and then you look at it and they're not asking for credit card numbers, bank account information, things like that, and they kind of want to know if you own property in Kentucky and how long you've owned it, and do you drive, do you have a current driver's license, or are you currently been charged with a felony or something like that, I think, man, it's legit. Okay. But
well, if somehow the clerk of court, James Vilt, or jury administrator, Sheena Smith, listens to the podcast,
they probably do.
Reach out. Oh, I'm sure
they do.
Reach out and let us know if this is real, because if not, they're using your name.
Call Perry Starks.
Yeah. Also, Gregory N. Stivers, Chief Judge.
Yeah, Judge Stivers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, all those names are legit. Those are the real people.
Yeah, but you can Google that stuff.
Yeah, that I am okay, so I'm putting my who are you looking at?
Audra. She was just like standing there. There she is
again.
again.
Need me? Do they need me?
Maybe. Hey, Audra, do you need him? You've already interrupted the podcast. You might as well come in here now.
Okay, that was maybe. Do you need me or not?
They'll text you on your Dick Tracy watch.
I'm going to put my bet on the side that it's legit.
Okay.
But I am glad that we have your senses heightened to that kind of stuff. I wish everybody in the law firm had that when it came to what they put into their computers. My only request is if you ever do anything like that you do it on your phone.
Yeah.
No.
I just... that's the thing about a lot of these scams. I've only gotten one email ever that I really thought, okay, this is real. And it had to do with a Microsoft Office
Yeah,
account.
that was a famous one. That one got a lot of people.
It was a very believable email.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you can tell when it's a crap email, but the Microsoft
the
one
links
was,
in it.
it was.
I remember that.
But like I was watching an episode of Unsolved Mysteries the other night, and they were talking about this scam artist. She was a psychic. Now it's already kind of a stretch, but she was scamming people out of thousands of dollars. By the time she was done and took off, and the police were going after her, she had scammed almost like $500,000 off these people. But what she was doing was she was telling them that they were being like haunted, or that there was some kind of evil in their house, and that in order to get it out, they had to like burn their money. So she would set this whole thing up where they'd go in their backyard, and she'd have them hand her the money, and then she'd wrap it in a handkerchief, and then she'd seal it up because she's like, oh, money's evil, and then she'd throw it in the fire. Well, what they didn't realize is she had a separate handkerchief. So she would do the old swap and then throw the one that had nothing in there, or like, paper money, or like play money or whatever, and then she'd keep the real money.
Let's dive into that a little bit.
How do you fall for that, though?
I can't imagine the brain of someone that would sit and watch money be burned that belonged to you.
Right.
Like if she's saying that this is the reason for the evil in your house, then here's what I would do. I would say, let's take it to my Aunt Betty's house and let's leave it there for a few weeks and see if the evil follows her.
Right. She had a woman drain her life savings.
I don't think so. I mean, now that one, I don't see how but
Well, they did they had interviews. They showed interviews with the victims. Well, I put victims in quotes because you're just a moron if you're going to
morons.
I mean, here's the thing. I believe in the supernatural and the paranormal.
Sure, we've had that conversation.
Right. But still. And the other thing too is there was one of the ladies, she was telling the girl, she was an older lady. So maybe that was part of the problem. No offense to older ladies. Or no offense to the elderly, I should say in general. But it's like,
I'm pretty close to that, buddy, so watch.
But she was telling her like, okay, the more money you give me, the more power I'll have to help you defeat this evil that's surrounding your home.
Yeah.
And then,
me.
she was the same one that said, okay, eventually said money's the root of all evil. Now drain your bank account and we'll burn it together. So that's what it was. So it went from the more money I have, the more power I'll have to money is bad. Let's get rid of the rest of it. She had this woman meet her at a bridge, and she tied the money in a handkerchief around a brick and was like, okay, I'm going to throw it over. She goes, before I throw it, I need you to pray hard and I need you to pray loud. And she had the woman turn around and close her eyes. And then she turned back around. She's like, yep, I threw it. And she just believed the woman did it. So I say all that to say this. They did an interview with that same woman. Of course, they did it anonymously. So she was like silhouetted.
Everybody would target her.
But she even said, she goes, I consider myself a pretty intelligent person, and I can't believe that she managed to talk me into believing any of this. So I don't know. I guess there's some psychology behind it. Obviously, you're a good talker if you can make someone believe that. But
yeah,
I don't even. Oh yeah, well I guess we got on that because of this jury thing.
But, so we're gonna keep tabs on your jury thing. See if you get the paper.
If a guy shows up at the house and says, "Look, we need you for jury duty, but first we got to go in your backyard."
And burn money. You'll know.
It's not going to happen.
Know.
Oh, I won't be doing jury duty.
Keep us posted on if you get the paper
I will.
packet.
I will.
Want to shift gears real quick to a headline that caught my eye today. I don't know if you've been following this headline. I remember when it first occurred, and it kind of was one of those it's news today, it's not tomorrow type deals, you know. But boy, it has kind of circled back, and I didn't realize it had come to all this. So you're a movie guy. Right? Did you kind of read up the first time when on the Alec Baldwin deal?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I even got brought on a podcast where we did a deep dive into
so tell
the
me,
topic.
Did you see the topic today?
I haven't seen anything recently.
All right. Well, he's charged now.
Really?
Alec Baldwin has been charged with involuntary manslaughter.
Wow.
In the when they were shooting the film Rust. I'm gonna update you. I'll read what this parts of this, but for our listeners and for my sake, because this caught my eye and I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it really had that much legs to it, you know. So tell me what you remember that was factually true about it.
Alec Baldwin was filming a movie. He was also a producer on the project. And there was a scene where he was firing what was supposed to be a prop weapon that had dummy rounds in it. They did one of the takes. He was firing the gun at the camera. And I understand this side of it. They didn't want to do digital discharge. So when they pull the trigger, they use computers to make it look, because you can usually tell what's fake versus what's real. It always almost always looks fake. So they wanted to do the dummy rounds, the blanks. Problem is that the blanks still have, because there's like a little cap that's on the end of it. They'll still shoot out and it can hurt somebody. But anyway, apparently a real bullet or something similar to a real bullet, or one of them, maybe the metal caps were too thick. It was something along those lines. But anyway, so when he fired at the camera, it actually shot the camera operator and the director. And I believe it was the director that got killed.
Did he shoot one round?
It was only one. It went through the camera person. That's what it was. The director was standing over the shoulder of the camera operator, the director of photography, looking at the monitor that's attached to the camera. And when he fired, it went through, the projectile went through the shoulder of the camera operator and then through the chest of the director. So it really hurt the camera operator, but it killed the director. And come to find out, the person, their gun wrangler, the person who was supposed to be checking to make sure that, that everything was safe and everything.
His official title is armorer.
Armorer, that's right. So she was the daughter of a well-known armorer, but I guess she was like really new to the whole process. Well, the correct safety precautions were in question. I don't think that enough people checked to make sure that there wasn't going to be any safety issues. The gun wasn't properly checked and all of that. And yeah, but of course, Alec Baldwin, right out of the gate, the production got shut down. Of course, he was saying everything was checked properly and this, that, and then, well, eventually it all came out.
Well, there's one other person in the story, apparently. I'm going to see if you remember this. Okay. Before I get to, there was an assistant director. His name was David Halls. He apparently had some role in why it happened, because he's already pled guilty to the charge of negligent use of a deadly weapon.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know what his part of it was, but let me catch you up on where it is.
Okay.
The headline reads, Alec Baldwin to be charged with involuntary manslaughter in the Rust film shooting.
Wow.
Alec Baldwin and armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed, each will be charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the fatal shooting of the New Mexico set of the film Rust, officials said Thursday. Santa Fe 1st Judicial District Attorney Mary Carmack Altweiss and Special Prosecutor Andrea Reeb announced their decision Thursday morning in a written statement. And this is what I was going to say, the first assistant director, David Halls, so I guess there's a first assistant director and a second. Why do they do that? Just in case somebody gets knocked off or something?
There's first AD, second AD. You can have a third AD.
But you have the first assistant director. Does that mean there's another assistant director, or it goes director?
It's director
first assistant.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so the number 2 in line, he's already agreed to plead guilty for the charge of the negligent use of a deadly weapon. So apparently he was involved somehow. Here is the quote, and this is the statement. After a thorough review of the evidence, with an understanding of the laws of the state of New Mexico, I have determined that there is sufficient evidence to file criminal charges against Alec Baldwin and other members of the Rust film crew. On my watch, no one is above the law, and everyone deserves justice. Carmack Altweiss' office said in October she would conduct a thorough review of the information and evidence and make a thoughtful, timely decision about whether to bring charges following a year-long sheriff's investigation into the onset shooting. The decision's been made. Now we're going to have to stick with this and find out what goes on.
Right.
I am not a criminal lawyer. Maybe we need to get John on here to talk about this, but I don't do criminal defense work, but there is something in my mind that, involuntary manslaughter does take out this idea that, you intentionally know I'm pulling this trigger to cause harm or damage to someone or injury to someone, okay?
Right.
It's involuntary, takes that out. It's kind of like being drunk and driving, it's involuntary, right? But my point is, they hand this gun to an actor. The actor is directed and instructed by his crew to, let's see what it looks like, pull the trigger in the direction of the camera so we can see what this is gonna, if what you said's true, it was like a test. It was like, let's see what we capture here. He does what he's told, and he gets charged with involuntary manslaughter.
Herein lies the issue with the situation with Alec Baldwin. He was also a producer on the movie. So because of that, he
had
was
some supervisory.
Exactly.
And are you sure?
So he's part of the hierarchy. He's not just an actor.
Okay, so
like he should have been more in the know. And here's the other thing too. And this and I can only speak for myself, but I've had gun use several times on the sets of the projects that I've done. Now I've never fired blanks. We've always done it the digital way because we wanted it to be as safe as possible, and plus blanks are expensive, so it was just an expense we didn't want to, because we knew we could just do it digitally. We're not making action movies. So the way it works on our sets, we have Brad Youngman, the sheriff. He's our consulting producer, and so we always, because he's a sheriff and he's well versed in guns and everything, the way we do it is he has the weapon. We all gather around. He shows us there's no ammunition. The chamber is empty. The safety is on. Then he hands it to me, and this is where I think the first AD comes into play, because normally it would be like the armorer would then give the gun to the first AD. He would have to check the gun. And it usually should go through several hands, double and triple checking to make sure that the gun's not actually loaded when it's time to fire it, and then hands it to the actor.
Okay.
So by the time it reaches the hand of the actor, it should be 125% sure that gun is not going to shoot a projectile that's going to kill somebody. The way we do it is we all gather around with the actor standing right there. Brad checks the gun and shows us it's empty. Then he hands it to me. I check it, see that it's empty. I'll hand it to Eric. Eric does the same thing. Then we hand it off to the actor. And by the time it gets to that actor, they've already seen 3 people check it to show that there's no ammunition. And then a lot of guns too, they'll have multiple guns. They'll have guns and they'll be duplicates, but like one won't have the firing pin. So like that gun might have actual ammunition in it. So say it's like a revolver, so you're facing it towards the camera or whatever, and you can see that there's bullets in the chambers. That gun would not have a firing pin, so there'd be no way
to strike
to actually shoot the gun. But then by the time they get to the gun where you're supposed to be firing the blanks or whatever, of course, that would be a real operational gun. Here's the other thing, and I don't know if you read about this in the article or not. According to what I've read leading up to this incident, they had been using that gun in several other scenes or shots, and they were having problems with it. And there were crew members that were complaining about that prop gun because it was actually firing involuntarily. Like the hammer that comes back, they would be holding it. Someone was holding it at one point, and the hammer flew forward and fired. Now, it was a blank that went off, but it still did it, and it like scared the crap out of everybody. So they had a few incidents with that gun, and there were crew members that were saying, we need to take this out of circulation on the project and replace it with one that's just have another one made or whatever the case was. And get this one out of here because there's a problem with it, and have it replaced and get a different one. And it was brought to Alec Baldwin's attention, and for whatever reason, it never got done. So that's the other reason I think that he's being held responsible is those complaints had come to him, and he hadn't acted on it. And as producer, it's his job to take unsafe situations off set.
Well, and this is no criticism of the level of filmmaking you're at, okay? Because, I mean, obviously your success has continued to increase. So
I haven't killed anybody yet.
But my point is this: is if we're talking about an independent film that's being filmed here in Owensboro, Kentucky, with a very low budget compared to Hollywood films,
right?
And the safeguards that you just explained to me that are in place for that, I can only imagine the policies, the procedures, the protocol when you're on high budget films for how many different people check these guns and the ammunition or are supposed to before it is put into use. And so for something like this to happen, it should not have made it past all of those screenings. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me because, again, we fall victim to catching headlines, and I remembered this like a year ago. I was like, oh, wow, that's not good. That's how sad is that, And I remember thinking to myself, there's no way Alec Baldwin's going to get charged for anything out of that. I mean, good night. It was a mistake,
Yeah.
And here we are a year later, just a little less than a year later, and he's getting charged. So,
I don't know if you remember this has happened once before on a bigger budget project, The Crow, with Brandon Lee.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Bruce Lee's son was in the title role. And there's a scene in the movie where there was 3 actors and they were all shooting guns at him, and a actual bullet had made its way into one of the guns, and when the actor fired, I mean, it went straight through him and it killed him. There were still some scenes that they had to, so they ended up finishing the movie, but in this case, the actor, I can't remember the actor's name. He was just recently in Jordan Peele's Nope. That movie, He's a great actor, but he was the one who pulled the trigger that ended up killing him, and he wasn't charged because by the time the gun reached him, they were like, here's your prop, you pull the trigger. He was just doing what he was being told, so he wasn't held responsible for the death. But of course, he has to
live with that the rest of his life.
That with him for the rest of his life. But up to that point, which I think that was in the early 90s, there were more and additional safeguards put in place after this happened to avoid this, because it was a huge situation, because that was a big budget studio film.
That's what I was thinking a few minutes ago when you were talking about the expense of just using what are they called?
Blanks.
I was thinking caps, like the old caps, the red caps that you put in guns, the strip of tape with the little pops in them.
Right.
I was thinking of guns, I mean, like war movies. I'm surprised more people haven't been injured. There's millions of rounds fired in those movies.
I watched the movie Hard Target the other day with Jean-Claude Van Damme. There are so many gunfight scenes in that movie and sequences.
That's one movie. Think of all the movies where that's done, and that you have the fatality that you just spoke of back in the 90s, and then you have this fatality. Or now asking, I mean, and you may not know the answer, but are those the only two you're aware of?
Offhand, I mean, I know there's been other situations where, like Vic Morrow got killed during the filming of Twilight Zone when a helicopter crashed right next to him and decapitated him, and John Landis like almost lost his career. But outside of that, I mean, I can't really think of any other.
I'm specific to guns because guns are used in so many movies.
Not with guns.
Crazy, isn't it? And that shows that those safeguards work.
Yeah.
When you think of how many movies are produced, in a decade that have significant gunfire in them, and you think that we've really on record have maybe 2 or 3 fatalities.
Well, the other thing too that you have to take into account is like, I mean, at the end of the day, people look at this as movies are just entertainment. There's a lot that goes into it, and not to mention the millions of dollars. I mean, I know this was a independent. They call this an independent film, right, in Hollywood, but look, it has Alec Baldwin in it. Typically, an independent film by studio standards is anything $10 million or less. So let's assume for a second that they had $10 million invested into this project. This project won't get finished. That is $10 million lost because, I don't know, 1 or 2 people did not do their jobs correctly. And that's also now, imagine the millions of additional dollars that are going to be lost because of fees and of having to pay the families and all that. I mean,
let me tell you, the one thing that came to mind, and before we conclude, the one thing that came to mind on this to me, especially the one back, Brandon Lee, is that who it was? What was the name of the actor that was killed?
Brandon Lee.
Yeah. So if a, quote, real bullet or a, quote, different bullet ends up in the chamber, I, as the attorney on the negligence side of this, would find out how did that bullet get from was it from the manufacturer? Because a lot of times I'm sure they manufacture these things in gross, right?
I would assume,
you get like hundreds of rounds in the, and you've bought ammunition, I think, before, because you told them how you can buy a box of 50 and they're all each, and you have to take them out. And so you would think, so my question is especially in Brandon Lee's, how does a real bullet,
I don't know,
looks like all the other bullets, it's manufactured with all the other bullets, how does a real bullet get in there, other than the fact that somebody plants it?
I've never really looked into it. I don't know what a blank looks like. Somebody is supposed to go through every single individual bullet one by one to make
somebody
sure
didn't on Brandon's, or they did and they had a hit out for him.
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm really upset about that one. This one here, I'm upset about. It's interesting. It caught my eye, and I thought, that's a good topic for the podcast because it's it mixes legal with your filmmaking, and it kind of it hits a lot of the things we like to do here.
Yeah.
So happy podcasting today. Good luck to Alec Baldwin defending himself, and we will keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that's
as well as your federal jury duty.
Oh, I'll keep you posted.
All right. Well, it's been Law Light, brought to you by Foreman Watson Holtree, FWHlegal.com. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or check out our website. Lots of information there to help you. If you ever need good counsel here in the Owensboro region, give us a call. Until next time, God bless.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of 2 mockeries of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!